GM fam, today is Friday, July 26th, the first day of the rest of our lives, and we know it's going to be a fantastic one because we're joined by some of our favorite guests. You might know them from the Llama Risk team. Originally, they were just doing risk analyses for Curve, but since then they have expanded their empire. They now, by my count, are doing risk analyses for Prisma, Aave, DeFi.money, Yield Nest, Reserve Protocol, and most recently, Athena Labs. Did I miss anything?
Did we mention Prisma? We have a good relationship with Prisma. Yield Nest, was that there? I don't know. It's kind of getting out of control at this point.
I have no
We've
idea
got a
how you
lot of
guys are
clients
now.
now.
Basically, the lawyer to all, or not the lawyer, the risk team to all the stars in DeFi. Wormhole, why don't you tell us a bit about what's up?
Yeah, so I'll just quickly introduce myself for those who don't know. I'm Wormhole, the founder of Llama Risk. We're a DeFi risk firm, and as Garrett mentioned, we started out as a service for Curve DAO, and since have expanded to a number of clients. And we try to make sure that our clients are all interconnected in some way, which is easy to do in the DeFi world, where every protocol is somehow composable or interlinked in some way. So for today's talk, the relevant ones that we're going to cover are our clients Curve, Aave, and Athena, and sort of the intertwining of those protocols. And just to give a little introduction to the other guys joining, so Val here, he is leading our Aave team, and Itis is an analyst who is working with Val, and he has been doing a lot of research lately on Athena, in particular the reserve fund, and he's made quite an interesting analysis of the fund that got the attention of Athena. And as we're doing our risk research, we have a preference for having a close relationship with the teams we're reviewing. So we have a communication channel with Athena and share with them all of the research we've been doing on their protocol. And they've been really receptive to the work we've done and what ADIS has put together. And as a result, they've invited us to participate on their risk committee, which they've just announced in the last couple of days. And it's going to officially form in the near future, probably in the next coming week or two. And so we're going to be joining with other top tier risk firms like Gauntlet and Stakehouse and Blockworks, Block Analytica. I'm sorry if I missed somebody, but we're going to be working together in a committee with them to make wise decisions for the USDE stable synthetic dollar and the Athena protocol. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I just want to give some background about why we started looking into Athena in the first place. And then Val has done a lot of research on Athena, and we've put out some reports, several reports on Athena, because it's such a big topic. And Val can go into greater detail on that. So going back to around March, Llama Lend was coming on the scene, and I'm looking at a proposal here from Michael, founder of Curve, and on March 21st, he made a proposal for an SUSDE market on Llama Lend that would allow up to 20x leverage. And this was one of the earliest, or if not the earliest, leveraged products built on Llama Lend. And there was a lot of enthusiasm for this market and for Athena products in general. USDE became the fastest growing stable coin, synthetic dollar of all time. The first, the fastest one to reach 2 billion supply in, I think, under 100 days. So there was a lot of enthusiasm around the token, and it was largely driven by points programs. And so when we hear points programs, we immediately like the hairs go back on our, rise on our neck. We're thinking, okay, we need to look more closely at the sustainability of these products because they're so much driven by speculation. And so there was this market on curve lending. There's also a USDE market, which is it's interesting that USDE is being used as collateral in lending platforms because it's supposed to be a stable coin. It's not supposed to be interest bearing. But the reason that people are using it as collateral is because there are these aggressive points programs that are incentivizing people to gain leveraged exposure to the asset. Similarly, Aave had introduced USDE and SUSDE. There was a proposal back in April to add SUSDE as a borrow only asset. So Aave has been taking measures to try to limit its exposure by only introducing it in isolation mode. So there's a limit to how much can be borrowed against it, how much can be how much of the token can be deposited into Aave, and you can see currently on Aave. The exposure to SUSDE is quite limited. It's only about 1.25 million is supplied, whereas USDE is much has much greater exposure. There's 76 million USDE on the platform right now. And also in connection with Aave, just make a mention that MakerDAO had added SUSDE exposure to DAI's backing, and there was at some point a couple months back there was quite a bit of drama about the rapid pace that DAI was looking to increase its exposure to SUSDE. So this is the context of how we began our research. Is we're seeing that there's an explosive interest in Ethena, and a lot of it was driven by speculation. And the protocol, as Val will explain further, has some more aggressive or novel kind of design features that make it much more profitable than your typical stablecoin, but also have the introduction of many risk considerations that aren't present in other stablecoins. So I guess without further ado, I'll shut up and I'll let Val explain more to us about what Athena is and what are the risk factors that we think are most relevant.
Hey guys, so just taking a quick step back of like trying to understand what's the value proposition from USDE and where the yield is coming from. So as Wormhole said, USDE as itself is not yield bearing. It's meant as a soft pegged synthetic dollars. And where the yield is coming from is when you stake USDE for SUSD. And what the Ethena team is doing in the background is using what we call in TradFi cash and carry strategy, where they maintain a delta neutral strategy with different assets, namely Ethereum, Bitcoin, and other LSTs, where they hold the asset but also maintain a short position in the perpetual on a centralized exchange. And there's a yield to be made there because generally people in DeFi want to leverage long some assets and they're paying a premium for it. And there's this funding rate that's being paid typically every 8 hours on centralized exchange to try to realign the future position with the spot price. So basically, Athena is taking the opposite trade and is generating, that's the way they're generating yield, which is distributed to the SUSDE holders. You also have a set of permission whitelisted minters that can deposit these assets in the protocol to receive USDE. Typically, there are big institutions and key partner within the ecosystem. And SUSDE does have a cooldown window of 7 days. So this eases off the pressure on redemption. If for some reason a lot of people want to exit position, it kind of softened the curve in terms of redemption, so that Ethena has a bit more leeway in terms of exiting those positions. Because as we'll cover a bit later, maybe Edas, you'll touch on this. There could be realized losses or gain when closing these perpetual positions, depending on volatility, depending on execution, and so on. And the last thing that's important to know about USDE is that it uses custodians to LD asset. There's some licensing requirement and agreement between these custodians. And we're very happy to report that recently, Athena, since the last few months, they started to provide reserve attestation on these assets. So it's very much to provide the reassurance on the asset backing. Side note, also, Athena has very good documentation. So when I first started looking into the protocol, we were very pleased in the amount of information that was contained in the docs, which you don't see that level all the time. And also they keep improving, and they strive for transparency. So I'll pass it over to Adas with regard to what were the key findings in our report as far as areas of concern. And then we can also touch base on the reserve fund situation, which first got us attention from the Ethena team. So we were very much critic of the level of capitalization of the reserve fund. And instead of shutting us down or refuting our argument, Ethena decided to onboard us on their committee. So we're very grateful about the opportunity to make this asset safer for our clients, namely Curve and Aave, which have integration with the assets. So Adas, if you want to give us a quick overview of the findings, please.
Yep. So hello everyone. It's nice to meet with you. Yeah, so as Val mentioned, the reserve fund is basically a safeguard of the protocol. It is being capitalized by the yield that Athena is receiving. Part of it, it comes from the positive funding rates, from the perpetual positions, and from the LSTs too. So basically, there's a parameter called take rate. It defines how much of the accrued yield every week is actually transferred to the reserve fund, and this is how the reserve fund gets filled. The reserve fund has different assets. Like for example, some of it contains USDT. Some of it contains yield-bearing assets such as SDAI, and then another part of it is the Uniswap V3 pool positions, which are actually USDE pairs with other stablecoins. So that poses another question that we will address later and mention that. But yeah. Basically, there are multiple factors that could impact the reserve fund. So these potential risks include sustained negative funding rates, which happens during the bear market periods, sometimes during short-term stress in the markets. Another one, as I mentioned earlier, part of the reserve fund is made of the LP positions, which are themselves based on the USDE. So that is there is a risk of devaluation, in case of a USD dpeg, and we believe that this circular dependency is not a good thing. Also, there are losses that could happen, as mentioned earlier, because of the forced unwinding of the positions. Let's say if Athena has to unwind the positions during adverse market conditions, there's a lot of slippage to conclude the swaps, to go out of the perpetual positions. There's going to be slippage, and so Athena would invocate the reserve fund to basically insure against it. So yeah, this is exactly what we focused on during our research and these simulations that Val and Wormhole mentioned before.
And could I actually step in for a second, Idis?
Yep.
So just wanted to say that this type of analysis, this simulation of the reserve fund decay under certain extended negative funding rate periods is something that I've seen other firms look into. Into the Block has a Athena risk dashboard that shows the reserve fund decay given certain conditions over a certain time period to see how long would it take to deplete the reserve. But the work that IDIS has done here is going one or two or three steps further and looking at additional nuances that are that as he mentioned, such as the circular dependency and such as slippage on closing positions that could additionally deplete the reserve fund more than these other simulations would have predicted. So
yeah, I feel that it's also important to mention that Athena themselves, they did some research, but they did it even before the protocol was live. They were initially estimating some parameters and some risk factors. There was also a report from Chaos Labs that did some estimations. But yeah, that was done in November 2023. We felt like there was a huge need of a refresh because even Athena themselves, they were not expecting such a huge success and such scale of the protocol that there is now. And yeah, so focusing on the simulations, basically the methodology was to simulate negative funding rates with annualized APRs ranging from -5% to even -100%, focusing on potential impacts of the reserve fund. So I'll just quickly go through four scenarios that we had. The first one was simple base case scenario where sustained negative funding rates were apparent without USD depegging or any other factors that would amplify it. The second one was a depegging scenario, which included negative funding rates with the USD depeg affecting the reserve funds Uniswap V3 liquidity positions. The third one was including market volatility and slippage, as I mentioned before. So yeah, that leading to slippage losses and amplifying the whole reserve fund decay. And then the fourth one was basically a combined stress scenario where DPEG, market volatility, negative funding rates were all happening at the same time. And yeah, the key findings were that for the base case scenario, let's say that the largest risk happens whenever you hit funding rates that are lower than -50%. This has happened fairly. There have been very few instances of that historically, but we have been able to calculate that there's a significant depletion risk, which amounts to basically 0.2 or 20%. There's a 20% chance of depleting a fund if you hit -50% annualized negative funding rates or lower. In the second scenario, there was
and sorry, Adis, I just want to clarify something. In your analysis, you were looking at the BTC perpetual positions and ETH perpetual positions, and there was a marked difference in the depletion, right, between those two assets. So you're looking at you're looking at just ETH or just BTC, and considering what's the risk if the entire portfolio of USDE was backed by one or the other.
Yeah, exactly. There were two things that were considered separately, and this is how we came with the calculations. I won't go deeper into the math because it would take quite some time to explain, but you can find everything explained in detail in this article. So yeah, basically, going forward to the second scenario, we found that a depegging impact would marginally increase the likelihood of full depletion. And of course, let's say like in the third scenario, we evaluated that during extreme market conditions, if there's a significant slippage apparent, USD redemptions could deplete the reserve fund by 20% just due to the slippage. And yeah, we feel like it's actually a large effect that would basically deplete the fund at one instance, not in like many days or a prolonged period.
And realistically, if there was a scenario where Athena was facing large slippage losses, which may be due to an influx of redemption demand all of a sudden, probably they would limit the number of redemptions so that they would incur less slippage. But this would also cause the side effect that USDE would probably suffer a depeg if they were to restrict redemptions for a prolonged period. So there could be knock-on effects of having one strategy over the other.
Yeah, exactly. Also, Athena has a possibility to move away from perpetual positions, previewing prolonged negative funding rates. Like, for example, if you look at the Athena dashboard, they have about 8 or 7% of unallocated collateral, which is just held in USDT. So they also have that possibility to if they are able to preview the upcoming risks. Yeah. So our conclusion was that for now, the reserve fund and its current capitalization, which is around 45 million in dollar terms, may be insufficient under severe market conditions. And we suggested to increase it further so that it would enhance Athena's resilience. And this is why, as part of a risk committee member, we're gonna work hard to ensure that the reserve fund gets capitalized well. It accounts for all risks possible, and yeah, we're gonna try to work on that. There was also, I think it was Val who wanted to say something, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the simulation that we did was a first phase in terms of trying to model these different scenarios. But what we intend to do is further the research and putting together an interactive tool where users can input their own assumptions in terms of the reserve fund size, the funding rate, and so on, and the portfolio composition, and really see, and that's what I'm sharing on my screen right now, and really see how it affects the kind of runway in terms of how fast the reserve fund would be depleted. So as part of our engagement with this risk committee, we're going to put some kind of interactive tool together so that anyone, like, you can debate the different parameters, but at least you can see according to your views what would be the effect on the reserve fund. So I think that would be beneficial for the whole ecosystem. And maybe I can go more into details on what is this Athena Risk Committee and how it came about. So it's really in the Athena roadmap to further the governance, because until a few weeks ago, governance was really not that existent. So the committee will be formed of 6 members. So we're really happy to be working with other esteemed risk providers such as Gauntlet, Steakhouse, Block Analytica, Blockworks, and also the in-house research from Athena. And the main focus of the risk committee will be to formulate recommendation on different risk parameters that the protocol has, such as how much of a percentage can be allocated to maximum to LSTs. Also, what kind of breakdown between centralized exchange venues can what's the maximum percentage, for example, that we can allocate to Binance versus Bybit or another centralized exchange. Even the consideration of new venues for centralized exchange, because these the open interest and the rates can be very different from one venue to another. So there's kind of an optimization to be done there. A third parameter to recommend on would be to determine the liquid redemption buffer. So that at all time, Athena maintains liquid USDT in the contract to be able to fulfill redemption. So at this stage, I believe it's 4%, but it could be bumped up or down depending on market conditions. And lastly and I think most importantly for us, is the revenue split. So how much of the revenue and the yield is going towards the reserve fund? And we think the reserve fund is currently too low for the scale of the protocol, which stands at around 3.3 billion, I believe. We believe that Athena should raise this percentage of revenue that's directly allocated to the reserve fund. But you also need to balance out the yield that goes out to the end user to preserve TVL and make sure it's still an interesting value proposition. One last thing I wanted to bring up is that recently on Athena roadmap, there's the idea of incorporating new yield sources from RWAs. So a bit diversifying from the original architecture of the protocol that just relies on perps, and also trying to see if the perp yield is not as appealing, trying to see if there are other sources of yield, such as RWAs, that could be of interest. So that's also going to be an area of focus for us. We're going to look into this and try to formulate opinion on if it makes sense or not. And the end goal for us is really to make the token as safe as possible, especially in view of integration with Curve and Aave. So these are all very interesting topics that I'm excited to look into further.
Yeah, so this this proposal that Athena put up to allocate portions of the reserve fund and the USDT backing of USDE, they announced this at the same time as they publicly announced this this formation of the risk committee, and there's already a few proposals to allocate some of the reserves. So just for reference, the reserve assets sit at around $45 million, and the USDT backing, according to their proposal, which was 10 days ago, was around $235 million. So already there's a proposal from Securitize, which is the distributor of BlackRock's $500 million BUIDL fund, which is which tracks the overnight repo rate, and it's backed by a combination of cash and T-bills, and reverse repos that with maturities under 3 months. So it's a pretty conservative product. It's showcasing the resurgence of RWAs. We were pretty bullish on the rise of RWAs sometime last year. We were doing a lot of review of different products that were coming to market, and we're finding ways to offer their products in the most permissionless way that was allowable within their jurisdictions. There's proven to be a lot of challenges with navigating those restrictions, but we're finding quite recently that there's been a big resurgence in the popularity of RWAs. We were just at ECC, our team, in the past couple of weeks, and it was amazing how many teams we've come in contact with who are building products that are involving RWAs. Lots of people who are working on lending platforms that will try to straddle this permissioned versus permissionless line. And there's certainly more regulatory considerations to work out, but it is quite interesting to me that Athena is trying to showcase a treasury that is backed by RWAs, and this seems like quite an interesting use case for many protocol treasury funds going forward. Yeah.
So it feels we could speak about Athena all day, but Kirfcap, what do you think your audience is most interested in, or any topics you think would be good to chat about?
Yeah, this is all like really interesting details. So I think like what the audience, who are like a lot of degens, might be interested in hearing about is like in particular like on the Curve USD Llama Land site. There's the ability to leverage like up to 50x, which is most useful if you, in my estimation, like if you're expecting that the token is going to depeg. The token does depeg and you're expecting it's going to repeg, you could potentially like profit extensively if it does repeg. Have you looked into like a lot of scenarios where that's happened, why it's happened, what risk factors DGen should be looking at if they see this happening?
So we've seen minor USDE to SUSDE depegs because people choose to go in the secondary market rather than going through that cooldown period of 7 days. But if we look at Athena's TVL, you never saw any important reduction or quick reduction in redemption. So we feel that it hasn't been stress tested to its fullest. But the scenario where you would see the biggest depeg is when people are wanting to exit the SUSD position, potentially because there's a market going down, they want to repay other debt, or they want to be a bit more risk off. So that's the scenario that we think is the most likely for a temporary depeg, but that wouldn't affect any of the underlying value proposition that collateralize USDE itself.
What about the kind of broader points program? To what degree have you kind of looked into the points program, and like how might people like calculate the value of like earning these quote unquote points in their decision to LP or interact with Athena in any way?
So in general, we're very skeptical of the point raise. It feels at EFCC this year also a lot of the sentiment was we're kind of over that phase, and it's a bit less of a interesting value proposition. Something specifically in Athena's case is they stop the incentives on SUSD as far as points. So when they did, I think it was between SAT season 1 and season 2, you could see the liquidity on the SUSDE dried up quite significantly because it was not as appealing to be LPing SUSDE, which previously was receiving points. So this dual token model, I feel it's very important to make sure there's sufficient liquidity on the SUSDE side to make sure that people are able to exit position quickly if they want to, rather than having to go through the cooldown period. Well, personally, I don't like points. I don't know if Wormhole or Adis, you want to comment on points?
Yeah, I think that we especially seen this this problem of points, which basically creates this synthetic inflow of liquidity. For example, when we were analyzing the Go stablecoin from Aave, we've seen that there's a huge pool concentrated for the USDE GHO pair, which covers most of the liquidity for Go. I think it was around 40% at the time of the writing. So we feel like there is a need to find a way to sustain and keep these levels of liquidity, because we're not sure what happens when these points programs dry up, and if they're stopped, what's gonna happen with this liquidity. So yeah, we feel like it's an important thing to notice, and to notice the patterns among all markets for the protocols that are involved.
Yeah, and points are in some way a natural progression of the yield farming, which became a craze in 2020, and is still something that many protocols rely on today. It's something that is basically a backbone of Curve's model, is having an inflationary token that gets allocated to liquidity providers through the gauge system. But with points, you have an additional element of speculation that they don't have any monetary value right now, but everybody has a reason to speculate that they will at some point. And so it drives a lot of interest towards these types of yield futures platforms like Pendle. So we see a lot of token supplies for LRTs, for instance, get soaked up in platforms like Pendle. And so, yeah, we see there's a basically a manipulation of market behaviors with the expectation that people can earn something that they don't know off of points. And the other problem with points is that the protocols that are offering them are not necessarily transparent about how they're going to allocate points. They could inflate points for to benefit later users at the expense of early users, for instance. There's a lot of manipulation that can be done with the points programs. So there's unknowns, and then there's lack of transparency. Doesn't quite seem like the DeFi ethos that I sort of align myself with. But I also know that a lot of these protocols who are offering points are also looking for solutions to some of these problems, looking for ways that they can guarantee the behavior of their points programs is going to lead to some predetermined outcome that users can know ahead of time. So this is a space that can be improved upon, and it likely will continue to have some place in the ways that protocols are bootstrapping usage of their platforms. It may not be quite the craze that it has been in the earlier part of this year, just like many of the other speculative cycles that we've had, yield farming and ICOs and everything have had their big craze, and they continue to have some sort of fundamental use case that continues to be valuable. Just people learn to keep their expectations in check after the initial rush.
We've seen some instances where like the points programs like will either like end or like the terms will change and users will kind of suddenly have a mass exodus. Is this at all like a risk with Athena where they might anger some portion of their user base and might trigger one of these scenarios that you were modeling?
I think from my end, the concern is more about the liquidity side, like on the LP side for Athena. Athena is one of the protocol that's able to generate native yield, meaning that there's actual value between the yield. It's producing this profit on other users leveraging up. So this is I feel it's a very transparent way of generating value for the users. So in that sense, I think it will remain a compelling value proposition. And so I'm not surprised that it has remained like very high TVL, and even if it has plateaued a bit, we haven't seen any significant drop in the TVL. And with that pivot that they're doing with being a bit more agile between different yield sources, such as going for RWAs, I think they will find a way to remain relevant in terms of offering a good value proposition. It's to the service provider to make sure that the allocation and the parameters are within safe ranges. So that will be very much our area of focus.
So I think Itis has to leave us. You were saying in our chat. So just wanted to say thank you for the work that you've done on Athena, and thanks for joining us on the stream.
Yeah, I'll leave you in the discussion. If ever, you can reach out to us. You know our channels. So yeah, thank you guys.
See you guys.
See you.
And then there were three.
So maybe we can shift gears. We mentioned ahead of time that maybe you'd like to discuss the Morpho Vault.
Yeah, this one I'm just super interested in because I feel like so much of crypto and DeFi is about information asymmetry. There's a lot of opportunities sometimes for people who are willing to do the homework. And I feel like this is especially the case with the, at least as of a few weeks ago, and I know there's been some changes, so I'm hoping to hear the updates. But with these Morpho vaults that you created for various crypto pools, and what's I don't think people realize about this is that if you are a yield farmer on Convex, which tends to be kind of like the most common destination for Curve users, you can essentially take your position, your Tri crypto token that you're ordinarily just yield farming on Convex, instead lend it out through these vaults you created on Morpho, and still earn that same yield on Convex. But because no one really understands this, you're also able to borrow at very, very, very low rates. So you can, for example, like I'm very risk averse and I don't tend to do a lot of lending, but I was like, well, this is free money because like at the time it was like 0.1% lending rate, which I would use to borrow like half that in Curve USD, redeposit that into a different pool and earn yield on that, and it's doing very good. Like I've made enough to like buy myself like a candy bar, so I'm pretty happy. So thank you very much.
So this journey on this vault has been interesting. With Morpho, the specificity with the interest rate model is a bit tricky in terms of they have a dynamic interest rate model that takes a bit of time to reach the desired native yield, because initially when we launched this vault, there wasn't that much borrow demand because of maybe lack of awareness. So we've made several changes. Right now it stands at 100% utilization. So basically, we would welcome a bit more supply in terms of CRV USD. The the yield, including the incentive, if you consider the Morpho token at 750 million FDV, is quite appealing compared to other sources. But we're keeping the utilization at 100% to slowly ramp up the native APY, which borrowers pay. So we want it to be at a decent level so that we can have a self-sustained kind of ecosystem with easing off the reward down the line. We're reassessing the curve and Morpho rewards every month. So we're gonna try to balance out the APY so that we can attract more depositors. And also something to note is recently we've added a market with the TBTC WBTC LP token convex wrap again. So that will be also a very interesting proposition once there's sufficient liquidity for borrowers. We would also like other providers like DeFi Saver, for example, to be able to integrate this so that we could leverage Loop. The yield as is very interesting on the borrow side, but if you could leverage Loop these, I think that would be also a tremendous value proposition. So just to summarize, yeah, we're currently standing at 100% utilization. So basically everything that's being supplied is borrowed. And whenever we get more deposit, we allocate some of it to the idle market, which we created. And that's been communicated to the market and to borrowers. And they know that it's in the purpose of building up a native APY that makes sense from the supply side. So just trying to balance borrow and demand. But overall, we're very happy that to see the level of borrow demand that we've reached now. And that was built in collaboration with Convex and on behalf of Curve, because we wanted to create kind of a yield source and supply sync. So yeah, it's been interesting. We've been running this one since April.
So,
I'm glad people are catching on. Go ahead, Wormhole.
Yeah, so I just wanted to further elaborate on the interest rate model that Morpho uses. I think that it's an important component of Morpho markets that users should understand. It has a familiar looking rate curve that after I think it's 90%. That's the target utilization, and between 90% and 100, there's a rapid increase in the rate. But the max rate is capped at 4x the rate at the target 90% utilization. So when you and this curve is working in conjunction with a time-based mechanism. So that time-based mechanism is going to shift the entire curve up or down, depending on whether or not whether it's above the target utilization or below the target utilization. So in the early days of our vault, we had a lot of supply and we had not much borrow demand. So and that was because we had this pretty aggressive co-incentive campaign between Morpho and Curve, rewarding suppliers to the vault. Additionally, I think the relatively novel kind of structure of these markets made it more difficult for users to grasp. And so there's been a longer ramp up period of us seeing additional borrow demand start to meet the supply that lenders have been making to the vault. And so because of that, utilizations in the early days of this vault were quite low. And that pushed rates down to very low levels, which is why, Garrett, you were able to open borrow positions and make a very nice profit margin by borrowing and then supplying CRV USD to other lending platforms, for instance, or doing other strategies with it. And as that dynamic has shifted, where we now have a sizable amount of borrow demand, but we have an absence of lenders, we have the opposite issue happening now, where we have the utilizations pegged at 100%. And you can see the native APY is just gradually growing over time, and that's because it's reached the cap of what the interest rate curve will allow, but the time-based mechanism is gradually going to increase that rate until it's reaching levels that either borrowers will be incentivized to repay their loan, or lenders will be incentivized to come in and supply to the vault. And we've actually released several explainers about different components of this vault, so users can become more familiar with these processes. I shared it in our private chat, actually, the explainer we've done on the Morpho interest rate model. So you can go to our website at llamaris.com, and you can access these explainers for the Morpho Volt, such as this one. And this goes into greater detail about how this time-based mechanism is behaving, how long it takes for it to adjust. And there's even somewhere in this post, there's a Google sheet that you can that Morpho has offered, and you can play around with the values to see, for example, if the markets are pegged at 100% utilization, how long does it take before interest rates get up to 20% or 50% or et cetera. So that can help build your understanding of when you open a borrow position, how can you expect it to behave in such a circumstance, which is the one that we have right now, where all of the markets are at 100% utilization. And as it turns out, it's quite a gradual transition. So from where rates are right now, which is an average of somewhere around 2 to 3%, about 3%. It'll probably take somewhere around a week from now before rates get to a point where they start squeezing borrowers, I would say. But that's something that you can play around with in the Google Sheet, so that you have a better understanding how that works.
So it looks like, if I'm reading your screen right, over the next week or so, it's set to shoot up to like 16%. Is that accurate?
Just off the top of my head, that sounds about right. But I'd have to go back to the Google Sheet to reference that.
Right.
The 16 is the current APY that's effective.
That's the current effective. Okay.
And also, it's important to note that currently, when you're looking at this graph, you see native at 3.5, but that's at 100% utilization. If you look at target rate at target, which is 90%, I believe, these are much more reasonable rates. And we want to reassure all the borrowers that we will do everything we can to balance out, like to raise incentive to make sure there's enough supply, and to make sure that we don't squeeze out the borrowers. So we just want to make sure to make it so it's a bit more sustainable, but it will never surpass, in our mind, we don't want it to surpass the yield that's being generated from these token on the borrower side.
Right. So users that deposit Curve USD to these vaults, if the rates do shoot very high, they would be getting a pretty healthy chunk of this, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So lenders are earning, I believe it's 80% of all of the interest that's generated from borrowers, and 20% is allocated towards the Llama risk managers.
You're getting three ways, three-way reward. You're getting native CRV USD in terms of the native yield. You're getting CRV as far as incentive, and also the Morpho token. Important to know that the Morpho token is not yet transferable, but we've seen a lot of interest in receiving those incentives. And we have recently changed the way we are modulating these incentives. So we're renewing the incentive amounts every month. So we have a bit more leeway in terms of do we want to boost them a little bit more, or do we want to take it a bit of a step back? So we will be looking at how much this vault is generating as far as APY compared to other yield sources that you can get on CRV-USD and anywhere else in the ecosystem.
Are you soon going to be working as the Morpho risk team, given how adept you've been at biting off clients around DeFi?
So on this one, it's very important to say that this vault was purely for Curve, and we do have Aave as our very important client. So the focus right now is on the Aave side. I know that these are a bit competitive players in this space, and we don't want to take part in any of the feud that could be between the two. But on the Morpho side, this is the only product that we will be managing, and the bulk of our efforts is on the Aave ecosystem.
Very nice. How's been your experience been so far working with Aave?
So from my end, it's extremely pleasant to see how much out in the open the development is and the collaboration between service providers. It's a level of decentralization and kind of organizing the labor that I haven't seen elsewhere. So we're very, very pleased, and we're also happy that Aave has this dual risk service provider arrangement where we are working alongside Chaos Labs, and we are offering a much complementary type of service to Chaos Labs. So we feel like the synergies between the different risk providers is interesting. And lately, there's been some really, really exciting news on the Aave side that's been announced as far as revamping the tokenomics and also revamping the reserve fund. You used to have Stake Aave that could be Stake Aave that could be staken to Stake Aave, protecting the potential bad debt. And this whole system is being revamped in what we call the umbrella system. So we were going to do comprehensive research on this, but we think it's a really cool direction to take. And yeah, it's exciting to see the development and how much efforts are being put to stay relevant and keep growing the protocol.
Excellent, excellent. What are some of your other just observations more generally? Because given how many protocols you work with, you're like in a very good position to have a 30,000-foot view of the entire DeFi landscape. We talked about some of the trends like points and RWAs. What are you just kind of generally seeing around the space? That's kind of an open question for whoever wants to grab it.
I think something that's very much of interest right now is the AVS space. With Eigenlayer and other providers such as Symbiotic and Karat. With the scope we have with Yieldness, it's very much a focus area. And although a lot of it is yet to be built, and I'm not in the day-to-day of this, but from my perspective, it's very interesting to see what could be in terms of AVSs and how it could be applied to different fields in the ecosystem. I think Wormhole, you're also excited about this.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that was immediately where my mind went. The AVS space, or the restaking marketplace space generally, is an area where we don't know exactly how it's going to develop, but it triggers the imagination, because there's just so much potential of different types of services that could be built that use some kind of shared security model. And Eigenlayer obviously was the pioneer of this, and has focused primarily on shared security with ETH restaking and liquid staking tokens. But now we have several other competitors to eigenlayer that are emerging. One of which is Symbiotic, and they have this partnership with Athena. And interestingly, they're taking a more agnostic approach to the types of collateral that you can use within a shared security model. And so they've onboarded the ENA token and SUSDE so far, and potentially other types of governance tokens or arbitrary tokens. So the whole restaking space is starting to spiral into this wonderland of what are the possibilities and how far can we take this, which is also a good opportunity for risk firms like ourselves to get involved, so that we can tell everybody when they've gone too far. So it's quite exciting, and we're exploring relationships right now that we can build with Eigenlayer and some of these other restaking marketplaces. Through our relationship with YieldNest, it's introduced us to the space, and we're looking to provide more in-depth research on the individual AVSs and these services that are building on restaking platforms, and providing risk analysis so that capital allocators and liquid restaking tokens can be better informed about making selections for their exposures to these various services. Right now on Eigenlayer, just because it's the most developed marketplace, I'll just focus on this one. Not even on the most developed marketplace is there really a fully developed system. So there's no slashing conditions live. There's no reward system. So currently it's a platform that we could consider in beta testing. And so when restaking tokens are allocating to the AVSs that are building on Eigenlayer, it's kind of testing out the flows and the delegations, and making sure that whole process, the technical process, is safe and secure before there's actually going to be something at stake. So right now it's just kind of a testing phase. But eventually, and possibly by the end of the year, we'll see slashing conditions go live, and when that happens, restakers and other restakers, liquid restaking, these guys are going to have a lot more of a challenge to make their decisions on what has the most potential and what is creating an undue risk to their capital, based on what type of slashing conditions, what kind of centralization vectors these AVSs are inherent to the AVS. So that is something that is a down the line problem, but it's a problem that we're trying to get ahead of as quickly as we can, because when the system starts to become more open, we need to be prepared with knowing where to go from here immediately, so that we can advise clients such as YieldNest on what would be the wisest decisions.
I want to make a quick mention that we're looking for talents. We're looking to onboard more researchers, analysts. We think that the risk field has so much potential in terms of growing up. I'm thinking about a Twitter post that Omer, the founder of Chaos Lab, made recently, comparing Web 2 security versus Web 3 security, and how much progress and bigger scale the risk ecosystem could be to make this ecosystem mature enough to attract order of magnitude more TVL. So if any of the audience is interested in working with us, we're looking for people that are self-driven, motivated. They have a bit of experience in Web3, maybe data science. We're actively looking for talent, and we're expanding the teams on the Aave side, on the Curve side, with the multitude of clients that we have. So reach out.
And I gotta say,
you can reach us. I'm sorry if you mentioned this already, Val, but you can reach us most easily through our public Telegram channel at Llama Risk.
And I just got to give a plug. What an amazing opportunity. If you are still here in summer of 2024, after the ETFs have launched and the price is nuked and there's nobody left, if you're still here, you should probably try and get involved in some way in the space, because it's, if the space ever does see a bull market again, and you are synced up with the Llama Risk team, you'll be at the center of the action. And I can say, at least on X, we have crossed 300 viewers who are in fact still here, which leads my feed of the live streams on X, but those are still rookie numbers. Let's get that up to about 30,000. So take a moment to share, like this, retweet this, or re-X this, or whatever they call it nowadays. Get this to all your friends. We've gone over an hour, so I don't know how much more gas you all have in you. If you need to bounce, by all means, just say so in the private chat. But other than that, is there anything like burning in your brain that you'd like to discuss?
I think overall we just really appreciate any opportunity we get to present our work, and our mission here is to try to make DeFi safer. That's our mission statement. So we're trying to be fair, objective, transparent. Whenever we do mistakes, because it happens, we're clear about it. We make rectifications. So we really want to be the good actors here, and we're gonna continue on our mission and grow. And if you want to be part of the journey, reach out. Thanks for the time.
Right on. Well, this has been another successful Llama party in the books. It's Friday, July 26th, and we will catch you all next tide.